Well, hello and welcome. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my good friend, colleague, and co-host of our episodic series on leadership, Jeff Otis. And if you've seen any of our previous videos, Jeff and I have been working together and become friends over the last few years. And as it turns out, we're both kind of deeply entrenched in leadership, among other things, helping people get better, higher performance. Jeff focuses a lot on teaching young people how to become leaders. And although that's an area that's very interesting to me, a little bit more focused in people that are already leading in some capacity and helping them become better. Same kind of concept, slightly different niche, but we found over a little while that what we do is pretty complementary. We happen to see the world in a similar fashion. We don't agree on everything, which makes things a little more interesting. But we've done, I don't know, Jeff, 7 or 8 of these now. And I think this one, we started talking, it's, real time, it's December. And everyone's thinking about, I would imagine, we are anyway, goal setting, closing out for the year, New Year's resolutions. And we were talking about the standard and classic approach to driving toward a metric, a deadline, numerical goal, revenue, sales, whatever. And I was saying that was kind of burdensome for me my whole life. It kind of intimidated me, and so I didn't do it. I avoided goal setting. And a couple of years ago, I bumped into a crowd that was doing it a little differently. So I think what we'll call this one, Jeff, is a new spin on goal setting, a new way of looking at goal setting to include, if we want, New Year's resolutions. But we started talking about it in the pregame, and we both started coming up with examples of how we've done this in the past. And so, Jeff, I appreciate the opportunity as always to talk about leadership with you, but how about this new spin on goal setting? What do you think?
I think goal setting's been a part of people's lives for as long as we can remember, right? Like as we raise kids, well, what are your goals? As we've got new employees, what are well, here's your goals. As organizations, we set very traditional goals to measure progress and performance. And as we were talking earlier, what goal setting is so much about is less about the time, less about the metrics, more about doing the work that reflects who you are and who you're trying to become.
Mhm.
And sometimes, you achieve stuff very quickly. Sometimes it takes longer, but it's actively sort of seeing yourself in that role of success starting today. What does
Yeah.
that look like? And I think that's the sort of visualization that we were talking about, prior to getting together here.
Yeah, and I was talking about a particular structure that I've had some success with that I started following a couple years ago, and I've modified it a little bit. But to your point, Jeff, I think it's less about I got to get 10 of these by this date, or I have to implement this project by this date, or I have to drive this amount of revenue for the first quarter of next year. And I always found those intimidating. They always made me anxious. And so I avoided the whole process. And I can't imagine I'm alone because I've talked to a lot of people about goal setting over the years, as I'm sure you have to your point earlier. But this is to get into a little bit more, and we'll give you some examples because both of us have stories of this that we happen upon just by chance. That, oh, you're talking about that? I used to do that in baseball. I used to do that on the playing field. But yeah, this idea that I'm not aspiring to be someone, I am someone. And who am I? Well, in the context of leadership, I am a leader. I am a great leader. I am a good leader. I am a leader who's, very focused in these particular areas. And there's a look to that, there's a feeling to that, there's an environment to that, almost to the point where, well, if you're, just as an example, if you're aspiring to be a great leader, what does it look like right now if you closed your eyes and you were a great leader? Where are you? Who are you leading? What are you saying? What can you smell? What can you taste? What can you experience? Like that deep a visualization. And if you were to make a decision about who you are, aka who you want to be, and kind of trick your mind a little bit, for lack of a better phrase, into no, I'm that guy now. And what does that look like? and I revisit that visualization for a couple minutes every day, that over a period of time, I think most of the psychologists or stoics or self-help people that you would talk to would say, no, that visualization exercise is a thing. So what if we did our goal setting with that context in mind, Jeff? What do you think?
I think it would be wonderful for people. I think I can remember as early as playing baseball in high school, right? And I was a pitcher, you know, as we've mentioned in other programs, but I can remember listening to psychology tapes as I fell asleep at night saying, look, there you are. You're the pitcher. You're on the mound. You can feel the heat of the sun. You can feel the itch of the uniform. You can hear the crowd chatter and you can see that final strike of the game, you know, the hitter swinging and missing, and you can see the catcher running out, and you can see your teammates, you know, jumping around and celebrating. And it was like getting so entrenched with seeing that that I think the body sort of follows what the mind does, and you end up, you know, manifesting and sort of bringing that to reality, which was usually the case. And
Yeah, I think it was, I asked you earlier, do you remember when there was no such thing as sports psychology? And you immediately said yes. And then I said, remember how then it became a thing? But that's all been about visualization, whether it's somebody who can't steady their putter on the putting green, to guy can't find the plate as a pitcher, to Shaquille O'Neal, like can't make a free throw. Like he does everything so well, and he steps up to the free throw line and it just messes with his head. So there's countless examples of how powerful visualization is. And so when I was introduced to this in the context of setting goals, I'm like, well, that alleviates to me all the pressure of the metrics, but it holds me accountable to this high bar of, in my case, I consider myself to be, in all humility, a great teacher, a great leader, a good human being, a great father, right? Hopefully a great son and a great brother. But I think what you can do, Jeff, and I'd love your feedback on this, is you can pick some important things in your life, like in no particular order for me: God, my children, my girlfriend, my health, my business. 5 key areas. And I visualized in those areas every day for a moment, and I sent those things love and gratitude and positive thoughts. And, this isn't a 1970s pot smoking, Birkenstock wearing hippie thing anymore, right? There's science behind all this stuff. And I have found a great deal of solace because I've been practicing it for a long time. So, yeah, and I remember, Jeff, I didn't play sports to the same level that you did, but I remember in an intramural tournament in college stepping on the court, and I was a pretty good shooter. And I just remember this one particular game. It was a playoff game. And I looked at the basket, and the ball in my hands was like the size of a softball, and the rim was like 4 feet wide. Like I
yeah,
felt like I could just chuck the ball in the air and everything went in, and everything went in that game. So I know this works. Question of playing around with it to see how it works for you.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people call it like being in the zone, right? Like you watch professional golfers, and sometimes they get so hot they can't miss a putt. That hole looks twice the size, and they
Mhm.
just see everything going in. They see themselves as the best putter of that particular tournament. I mean, I can remember early in my business career, as I was just starting professionally, and I remember one of our CEOs saying, look, if you want to grow as a leader in this organization, see yourself doing the things that leaders do.
Mhm.
And it caused me to pause for a moment and start to reflect and think like, well, what are those great things that leaders do that maybe I'm not seeing? And
Mhm.
it almost put me in this curiosity, ongoing learning sort of mindset of seeing myself as being a big leader, but also constantly curious about how do I become and be that person that I'm sort of visualizing myself to be.
Yeah, well, you've talked a great deal with me in previous episodes about this concept of modeling behavior, right? Like great leaders model behavior. And of course, both of us being parents, we understand modeling and we did pretty early. I mean, I remember, I remember imitating my dad when I was a very small child, and he was my leader, right? Like we all did that, if we
Yeah.
had relationships with our dad, or we had a coach, or we had an uncle, or we had a neighbor. Or there was a male figure for us. It was like, I want to be like that guy, right? Well, what does it take to be like that guy? Well, he dresses like this, he moves like this, he talks like this. And usually he shows up on time. He's always ready. He's always in a good mood. He's always prepared. It's like leadership is largely about modeling. And if you could think of this in the context of that, it's like, well, you start to visualize yourself as this person. And whoever that person is that you want to be, you might want to be the best engineer in the world. You might want to be the best pilot in the world. You might want to be the best pitcher in the world, whatever. It doesn't matter. But now, if you're going to lead those people, you've got this built-in kind of modeling behavior, and then you can get into a discussion like we're having right now with an
Mhm.
aspiring leader and really accelerate the process of getting them to where they want to be, in my mind.
Yeah, and I think it applies, in all aspects of your life. Like you mentioned earlier, it's when you're visualizing how am I going to show up for my friends? How am I going to show up, um, for my kids? Or how am I going to show up when I go to this event or that event? It's really an art in visualizing, like what are you bringing to the table and who am I as I enter these rooms and opportunities.
Mhm.
Because life isn't all about work. It's like, how do you see yourself in all the different aspects of life? I think that's what a lot of great leaders do
Mhm.
is they reflect and they visualize forward and they set those sort of visualization goals for how am I going to show up in these all these different circumstances.
Yeah, and another kind of nuance to at least the way that I've been practicing this, and I modify a little bit here and there, and I keep an open mind, and I pay attention to what really resonates with me and what seems to be working over time, and I make little adjustments. One of them I mentioned to you earlier, three of the categories of my practice, my very short practice every morning: meditation, visualization, and prayer. And I kind of think of all those as the same thing, closing your eyes and focusing on something that typically involves gratitude for me or love of some kind or appreciation. And yeah, I think that, the other piece, and you made mention of it when you were younger and you went to sleep listening to tapes. That's something I didn't even bring up to you earlier, which is, yeah, what about doing this in the morning as part of a routine where you close your eyes and visualize this is who I am, not who I want to be. I'm this person right now. But then right before you go to bed, and I don't have the studies on this, but I know it's true scientifically. Whatever you're thinking about when you close your eyes, chances are your subconscious is working on that as you sleep, right? That's
Yeah.
a thing, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So I think it's a great, kind of to try and wrap it up. I think it's a great idea that if you're intimidated by goal setting, which I was my whole life, numbers put pressure, aspirate anxiety, whatever it is. And it's like, because of that, you just avoid doing it, which I did for a long time.
Yep.
Um, Maybe this is another way of looking at this where it takes a little pressure off, but it still moves you toward that aspirational goal of being the best that you can be at whatever particular capacity that you want to be. And maybe it's worthy of some consideration. And I'll be complimentary of you. If anybody that's watching or listening, if that resonates, Jeff's program, the OTY program, part of it, a core principle of it is this visualization of who you want to be. So I think if you wanted some structure or a framework because this did resonate, go check out Jeff's stuff. And, if you want to come my way and you're farther along, maybe in the leadership track and you're just trying to get better, but both of us can help either way. Get on my calendar and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail because I think certainly I could talk about this for hours, but we're on the 15-minute clock, Jeff. So that would be my closing statement.
Yeah, I think I would also wrap up with bringing this into context with something you can do today. And I just remember I had the opportunity to uh, meditate with Eckhart Tolle at one point, who wrote The Power of Now. And
Oh yeah.
one of the things we talked about or got into conversation about was literally wake up every morning, sit, while you're standing in the shower, like focus on feeling every drop hit your head. Like it's
Hmm.
a hard thing to do when there's thousands of drops coming out. But in that moment, picture what you want to feel before you go to bed at night. And like that's your to-do list for the day is like be the person that you see yourself going to sleep. And that's on a very small daily scale. And I
Hmm.
think what we've been talking about is now, then how do you extrapolate that across a 6 month period or a 12 month or 5 year period? And that's the power of visualization. I think it's a really good topic and a powerful way to set and manifest those goals for yourself.
Yeah, if it's intimidating because it's new or it sounds hokey because you've heard other people talk about this and never really tried it, it's really very small doses over significant periods of time, but it's small incremental efforts. It's not like hours upon hours every day. It's like 5 minutes a day,
Yep.
like 5 days in a row. And then 3 months later, you're like, hey, I mean, what I found, Jeff, is things. They weren't coincidental. Coincidences started appearing, but they weren't coincidences. I was literally attracting them. And it was pretty funny. I remember the first couple, and I don't have time to talk about them right now, but maybe at some other point. But things start coming into your life that you have essentially manifested. And if you think it's bullshit, try it, right?
Yep.
Just try it.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I've always said when you are focused on who you are and who it is you want to become, you start to see opportunities that you never saw before. And to me, that's the art of achieving more than you ever, thought you could to begin with.
Well, hopefully we've taken some of the intimidation out of goal setting so we can all set goals in a very different fashion moving forward. But as always, Jeff, thanks, man. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Okay.